This is Pastor Jeff Chavis. I'm the pastor of Church Online. We're an online community of faith, and you can find us at churchonline.com, but we spell that uniquely CHRCH because we say all that's missing is you. Churchonline.com. This morning, I am thinking about time. As you may well know, daylight savings time is going to come. It will be here this weekend. If you haven't heard that, get ready. This weekend, daylight savings times ends. So we have to set our clocks back. Remember, fall back. We have to set our clocks back an hour, or we're going to be very early for church. Now, if you are always late for church, this might be your weekend. Don't set that clock. You could be there early. But it makes me think about time every time we get to the season and just how we measure time, how we understand time, how we think about time. On the radio, as you may well imagine, things are controlled by time. There's computers on the other side of this that you can't see that are all locked into the time. Like this battleground program comes on at exactly the top of the hour. When that second hand hits zero, bam, we are into that music and we are starting the program. So right now, as I'm talking to you, I have a big clock that I'm watching so I know my time. But it made me think about how different that was in the ancient world. You may or may not know, time was not the same for them. They certainly didn't understand seconds. Minutes were kind of different as well. We thought of things maybe in terms of the quarter hour, the half hour, but primarily you thought of the hour because you told time in the first century. Sundials were a primary way. And then if you had to be a little more precise, there was something that was called a water clock. And the way it works is you have this certain bowl that has a hole in the bottom of it and it drips out at a certain rate. And they know that that bowl is 1 hour's worth of time based on the sundial, how far it goes. So you can see how inexact this whole thing is. But for example, the military, they needed these water clocks so they could set their watch of the night. And of course, you know now that the time is changing, that sunrise and sunset just get changed all the time. We're going into winter, and so we're going to have longer nights. So those watches of the night had to be stretched out. It's a really interesting and fascinating way to think about it in terms of our time. But it makes you ask yourself, well, how did they get to church? How did they know when to go to church? Because today, we say we're on Sunday at 10 o'clock, Sunday at 11 o'clock, Sunday at 10:30, whatever time, and people know we're going to start. In fact, I've been in churches before as the pastor. I like to talk to people as we begin church and get things going, and I was very rarely on time. And yes, some of our leadership, they would get on me for that. You need to be on time. But I always think in terms of that biblical time. And you may not know, or maybe you do, there's actually two kinds of time that are spoken of in the scripture. There is chronos time, which is like chronograph, like the thing on my wrist right now. That's the exact time. That's chronos time. There's another kind of time that is referred to as kairos. Now, that kairos time is like in Galatians 4:4. When the fullness of time had come, God sent forth his son, born of a woman, born under the law. That's chronos, in the fullness of time. There are a few places in the New Testament where it's used, both words are used. One of those I'm going to read now is First Thessalonians 5:1 and 2. It's also in the book of Acts 1:7, but it says it like this. First Thessalonians 5:1 and 2. But concerning the times and the seasons, brethren, you have no need that I should write to you. For you yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord so comes as a thief in the night. Now pause. Both words there in verse 1. Concerning the times and the seasons, or literally concerning the chronos and the kairos, concerning the actual time, the time on the sundial, the time on the water clock, concerning that time, or the season, or the fullness of time. I believe as a people, we are so obsessed with time in so many ways. Our world is just marked by time in ways that are way different than the way they thought. They were looking for a chronos time. When is the day of the Lord going to happen? Paul, writing in First Thessalonians, is saying concerning that time, or the kairos, the fullness of time. I don't need to write to you because this is God's timing. That's the way we need to think more and more. We need to become people of kairos, people that are more concerned about the fullness of time, like the example I used in the beginning. I, as a pastor, I'm talking with people as church is about to begin, and they're looking to me to start us on time. But in my mind, I'm way more concerned with this family that's standing in front of me that I'm speaking to. This is the fullness of time for them. They may be going through something. They may be pouring their hearts out to me, and oh no, it is not time to start church just yet. Let's wait a few moments. But think about it as it's related to our day. Are there people that you just don't have time for because we're so concerned with the chronos time? I have something to do, I have somewhere to be, somewhere to go. Oh, and yes, believe me, I have lots of things. Today is one of those days. I've got lots of things happening and they're going to happen right on time. But that doesn't mean that I can't pause and make some kairos time. Again, somebody crosses my path and begins to pour their heart out. They begin to share their difficulties and their challenges. It's time for us to stop thinking about the chronos. Because the truth is, yes, in radio, we are very timely. Things have to happen right on time. But in most of our lives, that's not the case. If I'm a few minutes late to this, is it really going to be that challenging for me? Oh, and believe me, I'm a person that was brought up in the broadcast world, so I also am very much challenged by this. But we need to open our hearts, open our clocks, and concern ourselves more with the fullness of time, God's time, than we are with the hours, minutes, and seconds. Is it possible that as a people, we are so concerned with the chronos time that we're missing out on something in that kairos time? Just think about that. We're going to pray about that here in a moment, but just run that through your mind for a moment. Are there people that I could make or should make time for today? Are there situations that I probably left because I was too busy? Oh, I'm running late, but I should have stayed there because that was the kairos, the fullness of time at that very moment. I needed to be with those people. That's just a little something to think about. And it's a great time to think about it as we get ready to set our clocks back. Just remind yourself of that, that's the chronos, but